Welcome to the Dragon Ball Access Podcast with SmugStick and Dragon Ball University. Hello and welcome to the Dragon Ball Access Podcast. I'm Josh from Dragon Ball University.
And I'm Luis from SmugStick, and today we will be talking about Dragon Ball video games.
Yay, I love video games, especially ones that are Dragon Ball. We're going to talk about early Dragon Ball games that we played, what we want to see in future Dragon Ball games, and just also whatever fits the video game Dragon Ball category today.
Yes, very much looking forward to it.
I know for me personally, I started off with some Japanese imports of early games for the PS1, Ultimate Battle 22, Final Bout, and I believe it ended up being called Dragon Ball Z Legends, which is now just confusing thanks to the fun new mobile game that is almost the same name. So I played those with a weird converter pack that I had to plug into the back of my PS1, then put in an American PlayStation game, get it to run the boot sequence, and then take the disc out and put in the Japanese Dragon Ball game to get it to continue from there. It was a lot of fun, and I can't do it anymore, and it makes me sad very often because I really, really liked Legends a lot.
That's really awesome, and I'm kind of jealous that you got to experience that because I wasn't really around as a person when the PS1 era games were really the mainstay. I was really into the PS2 era, especially with Budokai 3. That was really my first Dragon Ball video game, maybe even my first Dragon Ball experience overall.
Wow. Yeah, for anybody wondering, Luis and I have a bit of an age gap between us, which honestly I think is kind of fantastic for having Dragon Ball discussions because it's almost like we belong to two different generations of the same fandom. So over time, I'm really looking forward to figuring out things that I was into that you never had the chance to be and vice versa. So I don't know, I think that's going to be pretty nice. For me, my first US game that I played was Budokai 1 for the PlayStation 2. That came out when I was a freshman in high school, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Budokai was most of high school for me. Budokai 3 came out like right after the summer that I graduated. So high school was pretty much Budokai for me. I liked it, though. That was the first game I had ever played. Oddly enough, as weird as one of the big draws for Budokai for me was mid-game Super Saiyan transformations. Like, I hadn't had any game where you could do that before. You either selected Super Saiyan or you didn't.
That was the coolest thing about Budokai 3 to me, especially going all the way to Super Saiyan 4, because when we got Tenkaichi 1, you couldn't do that anymore, and it was really upsetting.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest drawbacks for the first Tenkaichi for me, was having to have gone from an evolution of a trilogy that allowed you to eventually do all sorts of different transformations, and the key and the aura in that game, it just looked fantastic. That was one of my favorite things, was what it looked like powering up as a Super Saiyan was very, very accurate to the original series. I mean, at least slightly updated to match the graphic style of the game on PS2, but it really hurt to go back to I have to pick Super Saiyan Goku again. Now, I think if not 2, I think 3 definitely solved that. Honestly, it's been so long since I've played Tenkaichi 3 that I don't remember if it had mid-game transformations, but I'm pretty sure it did. And some pretty major ones.
Yeah, it was starting with Tenkaichi 2 where they got back into the thing where you could transform in-game. Yeah.
Oh, yes, because by the time maybe in 2, but definitely in 3, you even had you could do however you want to consider it, Ultra Super Saiyan Trunks or Super Saiyan Grade 2, but you could get beefy Trunks from regular Trunks just transforming, and that was a lot of fun. I really liked the team battle aspect of that too. That was a really fun game for making what if scenarios before they had character creation.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. And I remember YouTube around the time those games were around, because you could also had the playback recorder, and people would use that to create little fan fictions on YouTube and episodes, and that was the coolest thing.
I actually started doing that right around the Ultimate Tenkaichi era. Once we had the custom characters available, that's kind of what started my channel, actually, was not that I ever got around to making the what if scenarios that I was trying to do, but I would create new characters. For example, one of the first characters that I made, he was a Saiyan but trained by Krillin. And I had this whole story about how Krillin was so excited because he felt like the Master Roshi and this kid was his Goku, and it was an opportunity to create somebody even stronger than him. And Then I wrote a whole series and that character, while he didn't make it in, a version of him did. And then, a lot more stuff happened. And I tried to build an audience to make that series, and then building my audience turned into what Dragon Ball University is today. So I'll get back to it.
Awesome. That's a really neat backstory.
It's really largely how it started. It was 6 years ago this month, actually. It was August of 2012 that I made a couple of phone calls to some guys people might know now as Jared and Archie and said, hey, I'm going to start a Dragon Ball YouTube channel and I'd like you to join me. And here we are. Six years later, we've evolved we started off as the Blue Banner Brigade, which was kind of a play on the Red Ribbon Army, and then we turned it into just the Blue Banner, and then we turned it into Dragon Ball University. And that was a whole thing. I was trying to come up with a new name. I'm like, I just want to teach people about the Dragon Ball universe. And then I said that sentence out loud, and then Dragon Ball University clicked in my head, and the channel has been that ever since.
I guess it's really appropriate that we're talking about video games as our first episode then.
Yeah, that's really kind of what started everything for me was Dragon Ball video games. Although I realize now I've kind of split off. So back to video games. What else? What did you play after Budokai 3? What was your big? What was the next really big one for you?
After Budokai 3, well, Tenkaichi 3 was the biggest one. That was probably the one game I spent more hours in than any other one with my brother. But after that, Infinite World all the time. I still wish I could play it. That was probably my favorite Dragon Ball game of the era.
I'd like to see an HD remaster of that. Like, give us Budokai again, but give us the HD remaster 2, which has Budokai 2 that we never got the first time, and then Infinite World. I want to play some board game story mode and have beam struggles and have Infinite World just because.
Yeah.
I loved that game.
It would be so cool. Like, just seeing the HD version of Goku running around Snake Way or collecting the Dragon Balls or the time chamber training, that would be incredible.
That game took a lot of, I mean, I guess you can't really say risk, but it tried to do something new with Dragon Ball games, especially in its story mode, and that really, really drew me in. I loved doing the gravity chamber training, and I believe hyperbolic time chamber as well. I think you did Vegeta and Trunks in the gravity room and Gohan and Goku in the time chamber. I might just be making this up, though, because it's been a really long time. I actually lost my save file for Infinite World on a trip to North Carolina. I was going down to visit a friend about 10 years ago, and on my trip, somehow my PlayStation 2 memory card fell out of my bag on the plane, and I got to his place in Jacksonville and realized I didn't have it. And for weeks, I had been like, dude, this new Dragon Ball game, you got to play it. He had left to join the military, so he really wasn't doing a lot of new gaming at the time. So I told him, you really got to try this game. I hyped it up for like 2 months, and then I got there, and we never even played it because I lost my entire save file.
That's going to be the saddest story I've ever heard.
It made me really sad. I just talking about it now, my mood has dropped at least a little bit. And now I want to play it again.
Going to the next gen, at least what was the next gen back then, like the Wii era, they had Tenkaichi 3, but I think to me the most important things of that era was probably like Revenge of King Piccolo and Origins 2 and all those weird games that came out.
Side-scroller. Revenge of King Piccolo was a lot of fun. There weren't a lot of Dragon Ball games, and there was that, and I honestly can't remember the name of it, but there was also a Dragon Ball side-scroller for the Game Boy Advance that was really, really fun.
Advanced Adventure.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Didn't it had the Tenkaichi Budokai stage, and you could do verses? Oh, it was so much fun. I liked that game. I had that on a Game Boy Micro, oddly enough. I bought it on a Black Friday sale. That thing was like a keychain, and that's all I had for it. All I had was Advanced Adventure. And honestly, to give credit where it's due, because, I mean, surprise, surprise, based on what I put on my channel, I'm not a huge fan of Dragon Ball GT. I do appreciate it for certain reasons. I like the design of Super Saiyan 4. I think the art style in mostly the whole show is fantastic. A lot of the animation was beautiful. But there was a Dragon Ball GT like side-scroller beat-em-up for the Game Boy Advance as well that ended up being a lot of fun, and of course I don't remember the name of that either.
Yeah.
I'm 2 for 2 on not remembering Game Boy Advance games so far.
That one was GT Transformation.
Yes, I see. I'm glad you know all of these things that I don't remember. Here's one I do remember that might be honestly one of my favorite Dragon Ball games of all time, not just Game Boy Advance, but Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury is to this day one of my personal favorite Dragon Ball games and close to everything that I wanted in a game, at least at the time that it came out.
Absolutely. That game was probably my introduction to the English score.
Okay.
And I loved it. I love it so much. I finished it during one summer. That's all I would play. We went to the beach. I brought my my Game Boy emulator, and that's all I played.
Honestly, for in terms of like the English dub lore and everything, you really couldn't get a better game than Boo's Fury. I mean, it used the Falconer score for starters, which in that particular sense worked really well. He did a lot of like synth music and a lot like the thing that I think I dislike more than anything about the Falconer score was that it never ever stopped. Like nostalgically I like it because that's what I heard in high school. Everything was all about that music when I watched it on Cartoon Network 5 days a week. But I never until I started watching it later on in life and watching it with the Japanese score, but with the English dub, only then did I realize that the music stopped a lot at very appropriate times. And then I went back and tried to watch it with Falconer, and no matter what they're doing, they're standing around and it's just din, 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 like all the time. It never, ever, ever let up. It was just, let's have music playing every second of every scene. But for a video game, that really actually worked in its favor.
That's a really way to put it. I've never thought about it that way because I've never really been a fan of the Falconer score. But thinking about it as video game music, yeah, you're right. I think it works really well.
It did a really good job for it, and they stuck to the English dub script in that game a lot. Like a lot of that game is word for word what you would see in the Funimation dub. So if you like the Funimation dub at all, it's a really good game. But honestly, it's just a good game. Period. It's one of the only games I've ever seen that applied training weights in a way that just really, really worked. Like you could put weights on your character starting off small and going all the way up to, I don't even know what the measurements were, but they got heavier and heavier and actually physically slowed your character down as a result, but exponentially increased your experience. So it was literally like training with weights. You'd put all these on, you'd be really slow, but you'd gain much more power from that than if you had not.
Mm-hmm.
And Legacy of Goku 2 did a really good job as well, but Boo's Fury just it fixed everything that was wrong with 2.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also a really good representation of that storyline. I think it does a really good job just showcasing that.
Yeah. It even tried to tie movies in too, and in some ways I thought that was really silly because, I mean, if anybody who's ever come to Dragon Ball University before should know that I'm all about those movies not fitting into the timeline very well. But one in particular was they tried to squeeze Fusion Reborn into the canon story of Dragon Ball in a way that actually worked. And to this day, I still think it was a great example of how to get Janemba into it while still making it work. Because one of the biggest things is Janemba would have occurred while Majin Buu was ravaging the Earth. Like, there's no way that those two things can count. But what they did was they cut out all of the Earth side of that movie. And it really worked. Like, you've just got a chapter after Vegeta blew himself up fighting Buu. You then take control of Goku, and right after you teach the boys fusion and how to go Super Saiyan 3, and Goku's time runs up and he has to go back to Otherworld, he shows up at King Yama's, and King Yama's like, hey, hell's frozen over with jelly beans and stuff, and you gotta go and situate it. And then you go and you find Vegeta, and you fuse into Gogeta, and you fight Janemba, and it really worked in a way that it just that the movie itself couldn't have pulled off.
Yeah, and it was really refreshing too because, there's a lot going on throughout the Boo saga, so it was nice to have a break to do something else, and especially since fusions were such a big part of that game and such a fun part of the game. I thought it was really appropriate.
Absolutely. Ooh, speaking of fusion, have you gotten to play Dragon Ball Fusions?
Ah,
for
yes.
the 3DS. Another absolutely fantastic one.
Mm-hmm. It's probably the
changed
best
up
game
the
in
RPG
this last
style.
generation.
I mean, one of these days I'm going to have to make a list rank of what I actually think are the absolute best games and see where it places. I just hope they make another one for Switch at some point.
Me too.
Or really for all consoles, but oh, that game was just so much fun, and it changed up. It was like how they somehow mixed an RPG fighting element with like billiards, and it worked in just such a really fun way. And I mean, just seeing all these different combinations of fusions, and your character could fuse with like anyone. Oh, that was a fun one. Now I want to play some fusions again.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
all this is going to do. This entire conversation is going to lead to me just playing more games. Like, hey Josh, we should get episode 2 going. Like, I'm sorry, all that talk. Now I'm playing fusions and Attack of the Saiyans at the same time.
No, man. And the thing about fusions is that, like a lot of Dragon Ball games, well, specific Dragon Ball games, it had a lot of love and put into it, and I feel specifically like the locations were created in such an awesome way that they look just like the show. And like there was like a little quiz game that you could play, and they were actually like tough questions about the show.
A lot of them were, yeah, really tough.
Yeah, and you could collect little portals that showcase different parts of the series, from Dragon Ball to GT and the movies.
The hub world, to me, it was almost kind of reminiscent of Xenoverse in a way, but a little bit different, and I liked that too. They didn't try to just straight up copy it, but a lot of time anomalies and like, oh, Kame House is just floating around here so that you can see it and visit it. And
Yeah. Speaking of Xenoverse, we should talk about how freaking insane the hype was around it, because it was a big deal. It meant a completely rebirth of the Dragon Ball franchise as far as video games go.
And on it really has. Like, if it for as much as people want to compare and contrast Xenoverse and Fighters, we wouldn't have Fighters if it weren't for Xenoverse. It just wouldn't have happened. That resurrected the Dragon Ball game in a way that I still play Dragon Ball Xenoverse at least once a week. Well, Xenoverse 2 at this point, but it's not quite yet everything I've wanted in a game, but what it does have is the mechanics to get us there. It uses a lot of mechanics that I think if you apply it into something new, like the lock-on system in Xenoverse is incredible. It kind of stepped up the Raging Blast and Tenkaichi era into something new. It gave you that three-dimensional fighting, but in a way that you can now pick multiple characters and have group fights at the same time. Like, even Tenkaichi 3 had 5-on-5 fights, but it was tag team. So to be able to you're fighting Jason Birder at the same time, and if you're good enough at the game, you can send one of them flying and then change your cursor over to the next character and continue your combat with them.
Yeah,
so
as much as people don't want to admit it, it does take some skill to play Xenoverse too, in a good way.
And I think it like, one of the things I really liked in Raging Blast 2 was the signature skills that could be used with either circle or B, depending on what console you were playing on, because it gave every character their own unique feel that really made them feel like themselves. And like Gotenks was one of them that was perfect, because his would change up into different. He'd do his spindle top punch and his dynamite kick, and dynamite kick was Mr. Satan, wasn't it? Nuclear kick, that was, if you're watching dub, nuclear kick was a Gotenks move. I messed that one up. But it Xenoverse, the ability to swap out all these different commands so that you could have all of your specials and attacks controlled by hitting the bumpers and triggers instead of having to enter complex combos. It really lets you do a lot of stuff on the fly. That's really fun. One of the things that I used to love doing when I'd play 3-player matches in Xenoverse is I would have instant transmission equipped to a character, so that if one of my teammates got knocked down, all I had to do was lock onto them and teleport right down, get them back on their feet, and teleport back up. But it really allows you to chain stuff together in a fun way.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, I loved using the feed Kamehameha, because it could, not the feed Kamehameha, the Kamehameha that pushes you. You know that one, Tom, right?
Oh, yes. I don't know the name of it, but I remember it. What is it?
That
we'll figure it out.
So it's so useful, and I love using it. It combos really well into so many things. Just thinking about this makes me get a rush of adrenaline.
We might have to hop on some Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 for the Nintendo Switch at some point soon, and see what we got. Now, I mean, on that too, Fighters was mentioned very briefly, but I mean, it's, as the newest game in the franchise, it's definitely worth talking about. Fighters really kind of reminded me of Budokai 3 in a lot of ways. Not really in any of its control schemes, but just in the fact that it was a good Dragon Ball game, but a great fighting game. And I don't feel like we've had that in a while. Even Xenoverse, you can't really call Xenoverse a great fighting game. It's kind of very uneven in terms of fights. There's not a lot of balance with most of the characters, which I think again serves it as a Dragon Ball game, but not so much as a fighting game.
Yeah, and
one of the things I like most about Fighters is Krillin being able to fight Beerus. And having it make sense within the story.
Yeah, I agree. And I was really hyped up for Fighters, and I love the game. But I haven't been playing much of it because I feel like it lacks a bit of content. But the way it's been supported and the way the people making it have really made each character feel unique to one another is really incredible, and an achievement, since a lot of the characters in Dragon Ball, whether we like to admit it or not, use very similar techniques, a bunch of beam attacks and things like that not necessarily God, I can't speak. Set each other apart too much, but they've made these things really, useful in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does, like you said, it made every character feel unique in a way that normally they're not. And it's nice to have some balance. I mean, how awesome is it that people kick so much ass with Yamcha now? Like, I never thought those words would be able to come out of my mouth. Yet here, like, Yamcha's one of the best characters in this game, and that's just it's awesome to see some of the lower levels get their just desserts. It's nice to see Krillin, Tien, and Yamcha be useful, for lack of a better term, and I regret, honestly, that I even just said that because I love Krillin. We could do a whole podcast talking about Krillin one of these times.
We should.
Okay, I'm down. Episode 3, Krillin and why he's awesome. We'll see what happens, but it'll be it's happening. It's gonna happen. I think with Fighters, one thing that people, I don't know if it's that they don't want to see it, don't want to admit to it, because there really seems to be, Fighters is so different than Xenoverse that it's become this kind of war of its own. Like it's become this thing of what's better, Xenoverse or Fighters, and they're both better and they're both worse. It just depends on how you want to categorize it and look at it. Like, in my opinion, Fighters is a way better fighting game than Dragon Ball Xenoverse, but Dragon Ball Xenoverse is a way better Dragon Ball game than Dragon Ball Fighters. That was a lot of things to say.
Yeah, I have to agree for the most part with that. The thing that really sets Fighters apart is the community it's been built around, with the whole competitive scene. We just finished Evo not too long ago, and that was a huge deal. It was the most watched thing on Twitch at the time, and for a Dragon Ball game, let alone an anime game, to do that is
so
insane.
Awesome. It really is. Like, the game's been out for months at this point, so the fact that it's still got traction is a really good thing. The fact that it has entered a competitive scene like that, like, I never ever would have thought that you could, like, a Dragon Ball Z game is actually being treated with some of the same level of respect as Tekken and Street Fighter and Smash. Like, no way. And it is. It's got its own really nice competitive scene. It's just, but that's what it is for me, is it's locked into being a great fighting game that looks like Dragon Ball and has absolutely gorgeous visuals. But for me, one of the biggest things that I love in Dragon Ball is immersion. I want to be a part of that world. That's why at 31 years of age, I'm still talking about it and doing all this. I want to be immersed in it, and that's what Xenoverse personally does for me. I mean, you want immersion? Here, make your own character, pick your race, and fight alongside Goku. You don't really get much more immersive into the Dragon Ball universe than that. Whereas with Fighters, I find I spend so much time not enjoying what I'm doing because I'm busy going, oh, well, this team of 3 characters either wouldn't work together or it's impossible for them to work together. And I spend most of my time thinking about that. Like, I can't have teen Gohan and adult Gohan on the same team. That doesn't make any sense. And that honestly is one of the only things that really takes me away. I do kind of wish that they would add other modes, like a one-on-one option. I mean, I'm a big fan of Marvel vs. Capcom. 2 and 3 are great games, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is one of the only fighting games that I actually feel like I'm pretty decent at. Far from great. I couldn't play in any kind of competitive scene, but if it's getting a bunch of friends together in a room, I'm probably going to beat you in Marvel vs. Capcom. And I love Fighters because it reminds me so much of that, but as a Dragon Ball game, it just doesn't do it for me. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous game that I spend way too much time overthinking.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. The thing about Xenoverse versus Fighters is that the story mode with Xenoverse, I feel I don't know if it's more daring, but it does more with its story than Fighters did. You play the Fighter story mode, right?
Not through, no.
Well,
I at this point I've had it for so long that I'm just waiting for the Switch release, and I'll play the story mode on the bus and stuff.
so yeah, I really want it on the Switch. Just having Dragon Ball on the go in a different way was really fun.
No, I never got around to the story, and someday I'm gonna have to really break down what happened, because oddly enough, this whole thing ties back into the launch of Dragon Ball University and the creating characters and whatnot through Ultimate Tenkaichi. That became a big reason why myself and someone else on my team, we kind of despised fight. Like for a point, Archie from Dragon Ball University, obviously big fan. He's one of 3 members that founded this channel with me. He didn't play Fighters for the first time until about 2 months ago, simply because of the new character Android 21. One of the biggest parts of the original story that we had been working on when we launched our channel revolved around a villain character we made called Android 21. Now, one of the silliest parts, like, of course, it was the next number in a sequence. If they ever made a new Android, it was going to be 21, so we shouldn't have gotten so hung up on that. But it was just really hard to see a character that we knew we had come up with to an extent. And granted, they went in a completely different direction, which is awesome, and we've since reworked everything. But it really, when they announced that character, both of us, we probably shed a couple of tears or something. We were very upset.
I don't doubt it. It's pretty heartbreaking. I'm sure a lot of fanfiction writers had the same problem, since 21 is probably the most
and that's
obvious
the
number.
thing. There's no way we are far from the only people to have ever come up with an Android 21. Like, that was gonna be a thing that happened. But it was sad. But honestly, it was good, because it's made us rework the idea. And honestly, I think we have a better version when we're finally ready to release this original story we've been working on. I think we have a much better version of our Android 21 that we had come up with originally. So ultimately, it was for the best. It gave us a much more original take on the character.
With that, I think now that we're caught up to pretty much the present, I would like to talk about what we want in Dragon Ball games.
Absolutely.
Well,
you want to go first or me? I got plenty. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll go ahead. For me, I prefer the RPGs, Attack of the Saiyans, Fusions. Those are really the ones like Boost Fury. A new Dragon Ball RPG would probably be my top on the list. Especially if it was a sequel to Attack of the Saiyans, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. At this point, I think it's been so long we might need a remake. But I would take a sequel.
I'll take it.
I mean, Attack of the Saiyans was just, a 3-player turn-based RPG. Like, that's something that I really think Xenoverse hit home with, is the realization that just because Dragon Ball has a lot of fighting the show is not about fighting. The show is more about growth than anything. And you can really nail that in an RPG. So when Xenoverse combined and made an RPG with a fighting element to it, or vice versa, however you want to look at it, it really it's a major step in the right direction, I guess, is where Xenoverse started to do things that I had always wanted to see in a Dragon Ball game back in the era of the Tenkaichi's Raging Blast, Ultimate Tenkaichi. But the lock-on ability is something majorly that I really wanted to see with that. What I want is something honestly similar to Xenoverse, but give us a more open world concept. Not just locking us into the arenas that we have, which, the portals and stuff was a really cool way of being able to go from one area to another, especially in parallel quests. But give us an open world where Frieza's on Namek somewhere, and whether your character could either have a scouter, or over time you put stat points from leveling up into your key sensing ability, and then that allows you to no longer need a scouter, and you can sense what direction your enemies are in But what I want to see is an open world similar to like Budokai 3's flying around, but with a much bigger scale, and let you fly until you find Frieza and then lock onto him and then fight him. Like, as soon as you lock onto a character, then it goes to your Xenoverse fighting style or what have you.
Yeah, I agree. That would be awesome. An open world type of thing would be so cool. And honestly, you mentioned the portals and Parallel Quest. I think I didn't like that, especially if you were like in West City and you took a portal just to go inside of Capsule Corp. That completely broke my immersion.
And it really, I guess it's less that I liked the portals and more that I accepted it. It was like, okay, they're at least giving me a way to get from Kami's Lookout down to Earth and down to Capsule Corp. But no, we need something completely different.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have an enemy be like, all right, see ya, and take off. Like, that would be, like, what if you could do the solar flare and then fly 30 miles away and your opponent doesn't have a scouter or the ability to sense ki? Fight's over. Like, you win if you want to consider it that way.
That would be so cool. Do a Krillin and just get away from Dodoria.
Exactly. Just flash and buy. I mean, and I want to see something like that, but really an open world that's more than anything. That's what I need to see is an open world. Mm-hmm. I don't know fully how to handle it from there, because that raises the question then too. Would you personally, would you rather have if you got an open world Dragon Ball game, would you be comfortable with going back to a static Dragon Ball story? Like, all right, we're going to give you the open world, but you're going to play as Goku, Krillin, Piccolo, Yamcha, and like it's almost like a 3D open world Boo's Fury. So would you trade the ability to create your own character for the ability to travel throughout this Dragon Ball world?
That's what I was thinking too. I don't know. I feel like the character creator has become such a mainstay for these past few games, at least in this style of game, that it would be hard to get used to, and I feel like people wouldn't accept it. I feel like people would riot over that.
And I mean, this is mostly a hypothetical question. I don't think that one would necessarily negate the other. It's not like we'd have to have it that way. I could personally see if it was an open world and a multiplayer game, that could really make things a little more difficult. So maybe even just a couple different modes, or like you have an open world, kind of almost like an MMO, like you have an open world where you're playing with other custom characters. And honestly, you could even continue to tie it into the Xenoverse story. Like Xenoverse 3 could do this if it wanted to. It could open its world up and become something different and still fall into the same style where you're time patrollers and all that. But like another one that I'd like to see, even like, let's say for Xenoverse 3, you open up the world completely, but you're maybe tied to a single player mode if you want to follow the actual Dragon Ball Z story of it. Because like, one thing I think would be great is programming those characters to do what they already did. Like, okay, here you go. Like, you're a time patroller. We've sent you to Earth, and Cell is trying to absorb the androids. Go stop him. And like, you have to sense him while he's suppressing his ki. There's so many fun things that could really be done with just taking the boundaries away from Xenoverse.
That's a really cool idea. Like, and you could go like up to Kami's Lookout, and you just see like Goku and Gohan waiting for Vegeta to get out of the chamber. That would be
exactly
so cool.
Like have the whole thing have these levels take place in real time for the Dragon Ball world.
That would be a dream.
We got to make it happen. If somebody listen to this with money and resources, and give us a call at School of Z, at SmugStick on Twitter. Find one of us and be like, hey, we want to make your game dreams come true. Now that, go ahead.
I was gonna talk about the story again. I think since we've been getting so many new Dragon Ball stories that don't necessarily have to be set in not going through Saiyan and Frieza, Cell, Buu, getting completely original stories. Do you think that's necessary, or do you think we could go back to just having the Z story over and over?
Honestly, maybe not over and over, but I would not be complaining if they went back to the Z story for a game in the future, mainly because we've had a break from that for a while. I mean, a lot of the games kind of started to break out of it, like Raging Blast 2 had a lot of what-if scenarios again, which was really kind of cool. I mean, having Super Saiyan 3, Broly, and Vegeta That was something really cool that tried to shake things up a little bit. So I think we kind of got the start of it with Raging Blast. Then by the time we went to custom characters, it was like, all right, like all is fair now. Once you opened up the ability to create a new character that never existed in that story, that alone was a refreshing break for me. And then Fighters had while I didn't play all the way through the story, but I know enough about what happened. Like they had a new original story with a new character. So I feel like we've gotten the break that we wanted. And I'm personally ready to go back to it, just as long as I know I'm not stuck there forever.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you.
My personal hope is that Xenoverse would just expand itself a little bit more. Don't go into 4. We never get a 4th installment. We never got Budokai 4. We never got Tenkaichi 4. We shouldn't get Xenoverse 4 either. Like, round it out with a nice trilogy and listen to people. That's one of the big things is clearly Bandai Namco's been listening. I mean, Xenoverse 2 is still getting support, new downloadable content, new free updates, 8 months into the life of Dragon Ball FighterZ. I mean, this game is almost 2 years old. That is insane that it's still getting the level of support it's getting. So I really feel like people are being listened to. Now do what you did with Xenoverse 1 and take every feature you added, roll it over into 2, and then do this again from 2 to 3. We shouldn't lose anything going from 2 to 3, but there are still ways that they could expand and make 3 more like this, more of an open world concept, more something that people want to see. Now, one thing I do have to admit is Xenoverse, for me, did find a way to make the restrictions actually work in its favor. And I don't know if Xenoverse did it or if I did this as a way of coping with it or something like that. I used to hate the out of bounds areas in stages, like especially in a Dragon Ball game, when you get to the edge of that stage and there's nothing beyond it. You can't fly past it. Here you are. This is the end of it. I have to admit that in Xenoverse, for the first time, I found a way to like rationalize how that would work. And now what I see is I'm not in the Dragon Ball Z wasteland. I'm in a time bubble anomaly of the Dragon Ball Z wasteland, and the edge outside of the edge of the stage doesn't exist. And that's kind of how it makes every fight make sense in Xenoverse. And I know I just spent time complaining about how I couldn't immerse myself in fighters for the same reason, but in Xenoverse, it kind of does work. You exist in Toki Toki or Kanton City in this time hub, this space between time in Dragon Ball. And it's almost like you're just plucking versions of these characters out of their respective time and making them fight one another. So for me, it actually makes that work. Like, it works that Super Saiyan 4 Goku is fighting Super Saiyan Blue Goku because you're literally plucking them out of their times, alternate universes, what have you, and putting them into an arena and letting them have it out.
That's a really cool way to rationalize it. I've never thought about it that way, but it makes me appreciate it a bit more.
I hope that it can help a few people, that they can cope with it and listen like, I hate the outside of this stage. Oh, but wait. I'm hoping if I can make people hate Xenoverse a little less, then I feel like I accomplished something today.
I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Dragon Ball game?
Honestly, I really do think I have to give it to Xenoverse 2.
Oh wow, really?
I don't think it's without flaws, but in terms of immersing myself into the Dragon Ball universe, I've never had an experience quite like I have with Xenoverse. The first time in Xenoverse 1 that my custom character was standing on Namek with Vegeta, Krillin, and Gohan, and first form Frieza was standing up at the top of the cliff, I felt like I was there. I was afraid. I'd been seeing this character since I was a kid, and for the first time, he could come get me now. And it made me feel like a kid at 28 years old at the time. So honestly, I really think I got to give it to Xenoverse. If I had a longer time to think about it, maybe I could change my mind. But in terms of immersion, Xenoverse 2 all the way for me.
Yeah. As far as immersion goes, I have to probably agree with that. Xenoverse, it's something else. It's really an experience, especially for a Dragon Ball fan to be able to be in the show with Goku and Vegeta and everybody else.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
To feel that sense of relief when Goku arrives. Like, he's here, yay, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's no other game has given me that.
I think I don't know what my favorite would be. There's too many games that meant so much to me. But Attack of the Saiyans is for sure up there. Tenkaichi 3, as much as people hate on it nowadays, it's definitely up there just because of the sheer amount of hours I've spent on it.
If they overhauled the graphics and re-released that game, I would be all over it.
Me too, for sure. I don't know. I don't know what my favorite Dragon Ball is. I seriously cannot choose when I'm actually thinking about it.
We might have to revisit this subject in another episode and have come up with it by that point.
Yeah, probably.
Also, apologies in advance for any dislikes I get us by Xenoverse 2 being my favorite. I've been around a long time with Dragon Ball, and I've played a lot. That just happens to be what really did it for me. Now, that said, I do like some Dragon Ball games that are universally panned, and I still like. I don't hate Dragon Ball Z sagas. I don't like it. I don't like it, but I don't hate it either. And again, too, it was like you were saying when you were playing Budokai 3 with your brother, a lot of that can influence it. Like, that's what it was for me. Dragon Ball Z Sagas was the first co-op Dragon Ball game that my little brother, who was not nearly as into Dragon Ball as I was, would still sit down and play with me. And the whole time we'd be like, this is wonky and these controls suck, but we were playing together. So that earns bonus points for me. It really... I don't like Legacy of Goku 1. I did until 2 came out, and I'll never go back.
No, Legacy of Goku 1 is a really bad game. But that Dragon Ball Sagas thing, I completely agree with you. Me and my brother spent also hours in that, and I was just talking to him about it the other day. And I was like, you remember Dragon Ball Sagas? Yeah, that was a bad game. And he was like, but we had so much fun in it. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Exactly. Like, it was a horrible game, but that didn't make it any less fun to play with your brother. One of my favorite things to do was lock onto an enemy and charge my Kamehameha and just teleport around them like 30,000 times. Like, where am I coming from? Where am I coming from? And then I'd release it. One of my least favorite things about it that I'll admit, do you remember that you couldn't fly up or down?
Oh my God.
Like, if you wanted to fly up, you had to find the highest point you could climb to and then fly off of that.
Oh, like, trying to get capsules that way was hell.
Yeah. You're like, okay, it's about 15 feet in the air by my estimation, so now I have to find a rock on the other side of the level and then fly off of that and hope that I'm at the proper height to get it.
Another thing about...
That being said, give me Sagas 2. I'll play it.
But another thing about that... I would too. But another thing about that game is that you couldn't choose the same character. Like, there was different versions of the characters. Also, Gohan with no arm from the future was the coolest thing.
And it's the only game that's ever given us that.
It's crazy.
It's one of the worst Dragon Ball games made, and it gives us a character that other games he should really be in. Like, let's see, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Raging Blast 1 and 2 maybe, but definitely 2, Tenkaichi 3. Like, in Tenkaichi 3 and in Xenoverse, he doesn't even use that arm. Like, they made a one-armed character, they just gave him both arms.
That still pisses me off to this day. I don't remember how you unlocked it, because I don't think there was a level with him, but I remember you could get him. And because Super Saiyans were incredibly strong in that game.
Incredibly strong, but incredibly stupid to get them there.
Yeah.
Like, raise your key, and then raise your key again, and then keep raising your key until you either transform or your enemy punches you in the mouth, and you have to start all of it over.
Yeah, and Piccolo had a transformation too, the fused with Kami transformation.
That's right.
But it was
they gave him that a lot in old games. Yeah, he powered up the exact same way for it.
Yeah, but the thing with
I think Gohan was Super Saiyan and then could turn 2.
Yeah,
there's another one of those. Like, what's up with that trend too? Like, there's a lot of Super Saiyan teen Gohans and no bases.
Yeah, it was really weird. But
and he's not even teen. He's 11 years old. Why did video games have to call him Teen Gohan and confuse everyone?
It's awful. But
it is.
With Broly and with my brother, just since you couldn't choose the same character and there was only one version of Broly, there was this trick that my brother and I would do where we would both highlight Broly and we would count to 3, and at 3 we both press Broly at the same time, and that's the only way you could select the Broly at the same time, and we demolished everybody on that game with that. It was great.
Really? You did actually get to play 2 players as Broly?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm not going to lie, this is even making me want to play Sagas again. I'm going to go on a Dragon Ball game bender. Now, you got a chance to play Dragon Ball Origins, right, for the Nintendo DS?
Origins and Origins 2, yes. Have you not played?
Oh, good. No, I have. I very much enjoyed them. I was a big fan of Zelda: The Phantom Hourglass, and this felt just like that, but Dragon Ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I never ever would have thought they could have such intuitive controls from a touchscreen and stylus. I can't believe how fluid everything felt, being able to attack with the power pole and spin it around your head. And honestly, I don't remember it as much in Origins 2, but I remember when I first learned the Kamehameha in Origins 1, that was such a cool way to fire off a Kamehameha. Actually tapping the Ka-me-ha-me, and the longer you held it, the more you got to charge it. So cool. Just so awesome.
That game was full of little details. Like if you close the DS, Goku would say bye-bye.
That's right. That was like the off sound for it.
You what?
That I remember. Yeah, he would. It was like it was his signal that you turned off the system in a sense, or put it to sleep.
Yeah, and if you open it up,
and that just reminded me of a Phantom Hourglass thing too. We don't need to talk about Zelda on a Dragon Ball episode. Oh, shutting the DS is giving me just nightmares. PTDSSD. It was not fun. Oh, but yes, I liked Origins very much. I was fortunate to, when Origins came out, was one of the rare times in my young adult life that I had a job. I was able to kind of just sit around and do nothing, and nobody really yelled at me for it. It was like I had to be ready for things to hit the fan, but as long as they didn't, I could kind of do whatever I wanted. So yeah, I played a lot of Origins and Origins 2 during that time. That's
awesome.
That was a very fun game. I had it for the second time around not too long ago, and then I actually got rid of my DS last summer. Right after I got married, actually. My wife and I both bought a Switch when we got back from our honeymoon.
Aww.
And so we got rid of a lot of our old stuff because it was dropping a lot on two back-to-back systems. It didn't last long. We brought home one Switch, and within about 3 days of me playing the Switch a lot and not wanting to give it up a lot, we decided we're just going to go get another Switch. And now we each have Switches.
Dragon Ball Origins, you've played both. You played both, you said, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, Origins 2 was my first. Dragon Ball Origins 2 was the first game I got for the DS. And I didn't know anything about Origins 1. I knew it existed, obviously, because there was a 2 in the title. But I eventually went back and got Origins 1, but it feels very archaic compared to Origins 2, which I think is probably one of my favorite games.
And especially, too, for you to go backwards, like I went from I only get to play as Goku to I get to play as 5 different characters. I can imagine doing that in reverse is nowhere near as fun.
Yeah. I think that happens a lot with me in Dragon Ball games for some reason. I went from Budokai 3 to Budokai 2, from Tenkaichi 3 to Tenkaichi 1, and stuff like that. It's really weird now that I think about it. Lots
of out of order stuff. Maybe it would make you appreciate the sequel more. Maybe I should start doing that. I should have started with Xenoverse 2 and gone back and seen differences in features. And sometimes it doesn't take much to be better. Like I remember one of the first things I noticed when Xenoverse 2 started getting its gameplay trailers and everybody was like complaining that it wasn't different enough from Xenoverse 1, one of the first things I noticed was, yeah, but rocks blow up when your key blasts hit them now. Like, and that was a big enough deal for me. I'm like, I'm on board.
Man, what sold me on Xenoverse 2 was that one trailer where the trailer ended, but then you just see a flash of your character going Super Saiyan 3, and I was sold.
Mm-hmm. That oh my goodness. And they've expanded so much more since then, but that was a big deal. Like, you could only go Super Saiyan 1 and 2 in the first Xenoverse, and there was no difference with 2. 2 gave you some lightning, and that's all it really was. And honestly, one of my biggest complaints still with Xenoverse 1 is that your hair doesn't change when you go Super Saiyan. Like, even Ultimate Tenkaichi kind of had that down. Not every character did, but some characters, if you went Super Saiyan, their hairstyle changed.
Yeah.
And like you could have flat Android 17 hair and go Super Saiyan and nothing's going to happen. Like you're going to have gold flat Android 17 hair. And that was a big reason that Super Saiyan 3 became a big deal, because it was different. It was at least a way your character actually transformed. They didn't just change their hair color.
Exactly. One thing I had a complaint about in Xenoverse 1 was you having to buy Super Saiyan. It just felt so wrong. But in
Oh, that's
Xenoverse
right.
2,
You had to buy the capsule, right?
yeah.
Yeah, in Xenoverse 2, you unlocked it. Like, you went Super Saiyan.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And it makes it feel... I mean, that adds to the immersion. Like, your character has to work towards becoming a Super Saiyan.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that the added free content and stuff has really done right. Like, you can go Super Saiyan Blue in Xenoverse 2 now. And, it's just so nice. And it looks really cool. The transformation's nice. And it honestly, it treats your characters similar to what Xenoverse 1 did with Super Saiyan. How Xenoverse 1, you had like an unlimited pool of ki. Well, it doesn't give you an unlimited pool of ki. But in Xenoverse 1, when you went Super Saiyan, you could fire off as many ultimates as you could until you ran out of ki, and then your character would power down. Now you can maintain Super Saiyan forever, and the higher level of Super Saiyan you use up to 3 will reduce the amount of ki that you regenerate. It makes it harder for you to charge that energy, but you get to keep that form. Super Saiyan Blue kind of splits the difference between the two. With Blue, your ki steadily drains, but it will also drain from doing attacks.
Yeah.
So you just need to make sure you don't power down.
It was really cool, and having all the transformations for the other races too, like Golden and the Power Pole and Giant, it was all really cool.
That was amazing. Oh, it was such a good add-on. Like, I mean, Super Saiyan, or not, Saiyans in general, I think are still a little overrepresented in that game in terms of transformations. But it's neat that the ones that shouldn't be restricted aren't. Like the fact that any race can use Kaioken or the Elder Kai's unlock ability or hidden potential. It's neat that they didn't restrict all of them to it, but having Golden Form and Power Pole, like seeing all those, it was just so cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of people complained early on about the Majin's transformation. I think that it's kind of fitting. Like, a lot of people were saying when Xenoverse 2, when that form was first announced, that it was lazy. Like, what, they just turned into Kid Buu. That's kind of lazy in terms of setting up the character. But it kind of makes sense. Like, if Kid Buu was Majin Buu's purest form, then really all you have to think about it as is your Majin character has absorbed enough people to look like whatever your character is, and they shed all of that and turn into their pure form for their transformation. Like, it's silly that it looks like Kid Buu, sure, but beyond that, it honestly kind of makes sense from a lore standpoint.
Yeah.
All you're really doing is spitting everyone out and going back to your pure form. They even call the transformation purification.
Yeah, that's right.
So don't be so silly, everyone. If you start playing the Majins, because it's pretty cool, and I think you're not taking that into account. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sorry. Whoever's listening to this and taking that personally, I apologize.
Well, guys, but I think that's pretty much all the time we have for now.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more on this subject to talk about, so I think we're going to have to do some more video game episodes, because like we're pushing an hour on this one, and I don't feel like we even scratched the surface, to be honest. Very satisfied with what we talked about, but I have so much more.
Yeah, it was really fun, and I think it was a good first episode.
Absolutely. I hope other people thought it was a good first episode too. If you thought it was, then maybe, leave us a like and comment on how you thought we did good or what else you want us to talk about. And make sure to check out SmugStick's channel, and make sure to check out mine. There will be links in the description.
Yep. Thank you for listening, guys.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you, or you'll hear us next time on the Dragon Ball Access podcast. Bye.
Bye.